The world's largest car company just admitted, out loud, on the record, that the strategy it has defended for over a decade might not be enough anymore. Not a leaked memo, not an anonymous source. Toyota itself, saying the quiet part out loud, doing things the Toyota way, the cautious way, the hybrid, first way, may no longer be enough to survive what's coming next. And here's the part that will really mess with your head. This is the exact same company that spent years getting mocked by analysts, roasted by tech journalists, and written off as the last dinosaur standing while Tesla, BYD, and a wave of Chinese challengers ran laps around it in the electric vehicle race. Toyota sat back, kept building hybrids, kept insisting there was no single path to the future, and kept getting told it was falling behind. Except while everyone was busy laughing, Toyota was posting record profits, and now the company is dropping its biggest signal yet that its most famous nameplate on the planet, the car that basically invented reliable, affordable transportation for millions of people, is about to go fully electric. That's right. The Corolla. The car your neighbor drives. The car your driving instructor probably taught you in. The best-selling nameplate in automotive history is heading toward an all-electric future. And the way Toyota is talking about it right now is honestly hard to believe until you hear it in their own words. We're getting into exactly what Toyota just revealed, why the timing is so strange, and what it means for the car you might actually be cross-shopping in the next couple of years. That's exactly what we're getting into today. If this kind of story is your thing, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you're here when we cover the next one. Because what's coming up in this video is honestly one of the more surprising pivots we've covered from any major automaker this year. We're talking about a company built on caution suddenly admitting caution has limits. And we're talking about a nameplate so iconic that changing it feels almost sacred, about to get rebuilt from the ground up. Before we get into what Toyota actually said, you need to understand exactly how strange this moment is. Because this isn't a company panicking. This is closer to a company recalculating in real time. And it's happening at a moment almost nobody expected. For years, Toyota was the outlier. While nearly every other legacy automaker rushed to pledge all-electric futures, slashed combustion investment, and poured billions into new EV platforms, Toyota held back. It kept building hybrids. It kept investing in hydrogen. It kept saying over and over that there was no single technology that could carbon neutralize the entire planet on one universal timeline. And for a while, that made Toyota look slow. Tesla redefined what buyers expected from a modern car. BYD scaled electric production at a pace that stunned Western analysts and eventually overtook Tesla in global EV sales volume. Legacy giants like Volkswagen, Ford, and General Motors poured tens of billions into new battery platforms, chasing the same electric future everyone assumed was inevitable. Meanwhile, Toyota kept selling hybrids. Millions of them. The RAV4 hybrid and Camry hybrid alone became two of the best-selling vehicles in America. And by 2025, more than half of Toyota's entire North American lineup, over 1.18 million vehicles, was hybrid or electrified in some form. That's not a company falling behind. That's a company generating the steady, reliable cash flow that let it keep funding long-term bets without panicking over quarterly earnings calls. But here's the uncomfortable question almost nobody in the industry wanted to ask out loud. What happens when your diversified, patient strategy starts looking less like wisdom and more like hesitation? What happens when the market you're trying to protect starts moving toward you faster than you can react? That's exactly the question sitting underneath Toyota's newest signal. And to understand why this moment matters so much, you have to understand what's actually at stake with the vehicle everyone is now watching closely. The Corolla isn't just another car in Toyota's lineup. It's arguably the single most important nameplate in the history of the automobile. Decades of reliability. Decades of being the default answer to what car should I buy. Decades of quietly outselling almost everything else on the planet. If Toyota reinvents the Corolla as a fully electric vehicle, it isn't just launching a new model. It's making a statement about where the entire company believes the ground is shifting beneath it. And the way Toyota is now describing its own position tells you everything about how seriously it's taking that shift. The company has openly acknowledged that its traditional playbook, the one built on patience, diversification, and letting other automakers absorb the early pain of electrification, may no longer be sufficient on its own. That's a remarkable admission from a company that has spent years defending exactly that playbook in public. So why now? Why would the most profitable, most conservative major automaker on the planet suddenly signal this kind of shift? Start with the competitive pressure, because it's not subtle anymore. Tesla rewired what people expect a good car to feel like, and once that happened, the rest of the industry had no choice but to respond. BYD didn't just catch up. It surpassed Tesla in global EV sales volume entirely, a turning point that didn't get nearly the mainstream attention it deserved. And it's not just BYD. Geely, GWM, Chery, and SEC have all been scaling aggressively, turning what used to be a two-horse race between American and European brands into a genuinely global scramble. Toyota isn't just competing with Detroit and Germany anymore. It's competing with an entire wave of fast-moving Chinese manufacturers who don't carry decades of legacy combustion infrastructure weighing them down. And that changes the math on how long a company can afford to wait before committing hard to electric. Then there's the uncomfortable truth about what's actually driving Toyota's record profits right now. Hybrid demand has been strong, genuinely strong, and it's helped Toyota post some of its best financial results, while several EV-focused competitors have struggled with slowing sales and thinner margins. But strong hybrid sales today don't guarantee strong hybrid demand 5 or 10 years from now. And Toyota knows that better than anyone watching from the outside. If the company waits too long to commit to a real, credible, mainstream electric vehicle, one built on its most trusted, most recognizable nameplate, it risks watching the ground shift entirely, while its competitors already have years of manufacturing experience, battery supply relationships, and brand credibility locked in. Toyota reinventing the Corolla isn't a company chasing a trend. It's a company trying to make sure it isn't the one left explaining, years from now, why it waited too long to move. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Because Toyota isn't abandoning the strategy that made it successful. It's expanding it. For years, Toyota has argued there is no single path to carbon neutrality. Instead of betting everything on one technology the way many competitors did, it has quietly invested across hybrids, plug-in hybrids, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and battery electric vehicles simultaneously. That diversified approach is exactly what let Toyota keep generating record profits while staying financially insulated from the volatility hitting EV-focused competitors. An all-electric Corolla doesn't replace that strategy. It adds a genuinely serious, mainstream contender to it. And that distinction matters enormously, because it tells you Toyota isn't panicking into a single bet the way some of its rivals arguably did. It's adding its most trusted, most recognizable nameplate to a portfolio that already spans nearly every major powertrain technology on the market. But let's be honest about the risks sitting underneath all of this, because even Toyota has to acknowledge it. If the Corolla EV underdelivers, if it fails to capture the same reliability and value reputation that made the gasoline and hybrid versions so dominant, Toyota risks damaging the exact brand equity that's kept it profitable while rivals struggled. This isn't some experimental concept car built to test the waters. This is the Corolla. Get it wrong. And it's not just one bad product launch. It's a dent in the single most trusted name Toyota has. And the timing question cuts both ways. If Toyota moves aggressively into electric now and the broader EV market keeps decelerating the way it has for several competitors recently, Toyota could end up overcommitting to exactly the kind of single technology bet it spent years warning against. On the other hand, if this really is the moment the market tips decisively toward electric, and Toyota waited even one product cycle longer, it could have found itself permanently behind in a segment it once dominated by default. So where does the industry actually stand right now, today? Tesla remains a dominant force by brand recognition, even as its market share faces real pressure from BYD and the broader wave of Chinese manufacturers scaling faster than almost anyone predicted 5 years ago. Volkswagen, Ford, and General Motors have all poured enormous sums into electric vehicle platforms, only to run into steeper than expected production costs. softer consumer demand, and mounting financial pressure that's forced some of them to quietly slow down their own transition timelines. Meanwhile, Toyota keeps posting record profits, largely on the back of hybrid demand that shows no real signs of slowing down. But the company itself is now signaling, in its own words, that the approach which built that success might not be enough to carry it through the next decade unchanged. That's not something a company says lightly. And it's exactly why this moment is worth paying attention to. A few signals are worth watching closely over the next year or two. How aggressively Toyota actually commits engineering and manufacturing resources to the Corolla EV will say a lot about how seriously the company is treating this shift versus simply testing the market. Whether that commitment shows up in pricing that stays close to the hybrid and gasoline Corolla or drifts upward the way many EVs have, will determine whether this reinvention actually reaches the mainstream buyers who made the Corolla the best-selling car on the planet in the first place. And how competitors, both the legacy giants and the fast-moving Chinese manufacturers, respond to Toyota finally entering this specific fight will tell you a lot about how much this single decision actually reshapes the broader competitive landscape. We've covered an enormous amount of ground here, from Toyota's decade of deliberate caution to the competitive pressure quietly building underneath its record profits, to a nameplate as iconic as the Corolla potentially becoming the company's boldest electric statement yet. And if there's one honest takeaway from all of it, it's this. Toyota isn't abandoning the strategy that made it the most profitable automaker on the planet. It's admitting that strategy alone might not be enough anymore, and it's putting its most trusted name on the line to prove it can evolve without losing what made it successful in the first place. That's a genuinely difficult balance to strike. Move too aggressively, and you risk diluting decades of brand trust built on reliability over hype. Move too cautiously, and you risk watching a market you once dominated by default slip permanently into someone else's hands. What matters more than picking a side in that debate is recognizing just how significant it is that Toyota, of all companies, is the one publicly acknowledging the tension. The company that spent years being mocked for moving too slowly is now the one openly admitting the ground beneath the entire industry is shifting faster than its old playbook can keep up with. The future of the world's best-selling car is still being written, and sometimes the company that spent years playing it safest ends up making the boldest move of all, right when almost nobody expected it to. So, what do you think? Is Toyota finally making the move it should have made years ago? Or is reinventing the Corolla itself too big a risk for a brand built entirely on trust and reliability? And more importantly, if the company known for never following the crowd is now signaling it has to change course, what does that tell you about how much time the rest of the industry actually has left to figure out its own answer?